Okay, well, thank you very much once again, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. On behalf of Sound Vision, I would like to welcome you all to our webinar on dealing with social anxiety, social anxiety as well, social isolation and anxiety this afternoon. And we are very happy to have Dr. Farah Islam with us. As you know, every day for the past 1 week, alhamdulillah, we have been live with different presenters, experts, imams, and shuyukh with us, talking about various aspects of um, dealing with the current COVID-19 crisis and lockdown and pandemic. Alhamdulillah, our virtual khutbahs yesterday were attended by many individuals, several hundred, alhamdulillah. So we truly appreciate your presence and your continuous ongoing connection with us. So today, I would like to introduce you to our presenter. Dr. Farah Islam is the mental health specialist and screenwriter for Adam's World at Sound Vision. So those of you who are wondering what's happening with Sound Vision, well, with Adam's World, well, Dr. Farah probably can tell you a little bit more about it towards the end. She's the one who's actually churning out a whole bunch of new, beautiful, amazing scripts for Adam's World, and we have a whole bunch of episodes already in the pipeline. In fact, pretty much done that are going to be released on Adam's World app very soon, inshallah. She is an adjunct professor at Emmanuel College of Victoria University at the University of Toronto. She teaches the course Muslim Mental Health Research, Policy, and Practice. She completed her postdoctoral fellowship at the the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, and the University of Toronto. And her PhD is in the field of epidemiology at York University. She explores mental health and service across in Canada's racialized and immigrant populations using both epidemiology and mixed methods research with a particular focus on both South Asian and Muslim populations. Dr. Islam orients her research and community work around breaking down barriers for mental health stigma. So with that, I'll let our sister Farah Islam take over.
جزاك الله خيرا brother طه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الحمد لله الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الكريم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسرني أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. جزاكم الله خيرا for joining me today for this very special Sound Vision webinar. I really appreciate everyone being here. So today's webinar, we're going to be looking at how to deal with the social isolation that we may be experiencing because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown that we're experiencing, as well as some of the anxiety that might be encouraging us right now. So without further ado, we'll start with that.
Maybe there is a bit of a lag.
Yep, sorry.
That's okay. Why didn't you go back?
Okay, good. So we are living in a time of rapid change, right? So I want you to take some time, if you have a piece of paper and some pencil or just on your phone, just to jot down some of the ways in which the COVID-19 pandemic and just everything that's been changing, how that's affected your life. Just some of the losses that you've experienced as a result, and just in ways how that's kind of made your regular everyday schedule just different from what it used to be. You can share them in the chat box or in the Q&A section if you want to, and just so we can have a conversation about it as well. You know, a lot of us might say, and I'm certainly guilty of this too, I often say things like, you know, I'm just not good with change, right? I just don't like change. The thing is, for most of us, it's actually the uncertainty that we don't like. And that's what makes change difficult, right? There's a lot of uncertainty right now that we're facing. Every day we're getting new reports, you know, new data, statistics, new numbers about the death toll that's rising around the world, right? New cases happening in Canada, symptoms, being very ambiguous and changing, the virus mutating, right? It's just a lot to take in. Just honestly, every single day, maybe even every hour, we're getting a new news report about something else. And so, in addition to all that, people are losing their loved ones. May Allah have mercy on them. They're losing jobs because of stock markets crashing, companies having to close down in this time, economic crisis. Consider what's happening to gas prices between, Saudi and Russia, everything. Just there's so much going on around the world. And the thing is, on that's sort of on a macro scale, on a global big scale, but there's also the everyday losses that we're experiencing too, right? Where, for example, having to cancel our March break plans, not being able to visit our family or our loved ones or our friends on the weekends as we normally would have, right? So there's a lot that we're having to contend with. For example, on a lighter note, I had a friend over the other day before the lockdown, and she mentioned how, her son, who was 5 years old, was really looking forward to March break, and they had, a great family holiday planned. And so her husband and her were trying to grapple with how they were going to break it to their little son that, I think March break is going to be canceled, or we're not going to get to go where we wanted to go. And then the little guy is 5 years old. Mama, I need this vacation, right? With all the sort of passion and vigor that a 5-year-old can have. So you can imagine that, if a young 5-year-old could feel that way, it's something that we're also obviously experiencing too. We're also witnessing a lot of loss when it comes to our mosques, right? Consider some of these images that we've been seeing of the Haram being closed down, or hearing reports about Masjid an-Nabawi being closed to worshipers and people not being able to pray, right? It's shocking to see these images, and it hurts for a lot of us. And we've also seen Jum'ahs being canceled, or our Friday congregational prayer being canceled in our city or around the world. And many of us, Jum'ah was that day, right? Friday was that maybe one day where we get to see members of the community. We get to hug them, say salam, embrace them, and, be a community together and worship together. How powerful that communal experience is. And we've lost that now, right? And there's another loss if we're looking forward to Ramadan, right? There's the potential loss of Taraweeh, right? Or of Qiyam altogether, having that night prayer and having that, again, that communal experience of being together, of worshiping together, and how, for, I think most of us, that's such an integral part of what Ramadan is. And so we're kind of having to contend with this loss of, well, maybe Ramadan this year won't be the same anymore, right? SubhanAllah. So we're dealing with a lot. And in this webinar, I'm going to offer sort of 5 tips, or like a step-by-step 5 sort of pointers on how we can sort of deal with some of the isolation we might be experiencing and the anxiety that we're going through right now, just to try to help us get through that process. So number 1 is allow yourself time, allow yourself chance to grieve. The thing is, everybody grieves differently, and everybody thinks about loss in a different way. For some of us, when we experience a difficulty, we have to talk it out with somebody. It's your sister, it's your confidant, it's your spouse, whoever it is, but you need to sort of unload the emotions, the anxieties, anything you might be feeling. You need to be able to just have somebody to talk to, and to sort of bounce ideas off of, to understand or process what you're going through. For some of us, and I'm like this, right, I need to sort of, I'm not really great at expressing necessarily how I'm feeling or my emotions. So I need to usually write it down. That's kind of the first way that I can understand what I'm going through. And for others, there might be other sort of routes that you might have. So for example, there's the Nisa Women's Mental Health Helpline. You might need to, call a helpline or a crisis text line, for example, just to have someone, a counselor, anybody to just sort of work your way through the emotions you might be experiencing. For many of us, the thing is, when we face different emotions or difficult emotions in our life, we kind of have a tendency to label them as bad emotions, and we bottle them up, we shove them under a rug, and we'd rather sort of go through life pretending like we're not experiencing them, right? Or denying them, or being angry at ourselves for even feeling them to begin with, right? Sometimes we get angry at ourselves for being angry, right? We deny our sort of capacity, or we don't allow ourselves to even be angry, to even allow ourselves those emotions. And so we just want to kind of push them away and just, soldier through, just move forward, just get through it, just ignore it. The problem is that sort of tactic usually comes back to bite us, right? Those repressed feelings usually manage to get out in some way, shape, or the other. And there are casualties that have to pay for that. And those are usually the ones closest to us. It could be our coworkers, it could be our spouse. And more often than not, it's those most vulnerable around us, for example, like our children, right? If you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling angry, you're feeling isolated about all the information that's going around, feeling just upset that you're having to be on lockdown, upset about the loss that's happening around the world, right? If we don't allow ourselves to process it, unfortunately, oftentimes that anger will come out in sort of an explosive kind of a way, or an implosive. Sometimes some of us implode and we kind of break down within ourselves. But again, there are casualties when we do that to ourselves. So taking time to sort of figure out what it is that you're going through and what you're honestly feeling is so critical to your mental health and well-being. And so again, you can take some time just to jot down some of the different emotions you might be experiencing. If you want, and you're very brave, and we'd really appreciate it, of course, if you want to share that with us as well in the chat box. It's so wonderful to have a conversation again about what we're all experiencing. The thing is, we're in such a time of uncertainty that a lot of us are even uncertain about how to even feel. Does that make sense? That it's such a time of uncertainty that we're even uncertain of our emotions, right? Are we angry? Are we upset? Are we feeling so frustrated? Are we feeling powerless? Or do we just not care? Should we feel casual about it or blasé? I don't know, right? So a lot of us may feel all of those emotions all at once. And so it can be very confusing. And so we do need to take some time to kind of reflect, and just, whether it's to write it out or to talk to someone about it, but just to consider, what it is we're actually going through. And so I put here on this slide, allowing yourself to grieve. The thing is, at the beginning of the lecture, I went through some different losses that we've all been experiencing as a result of the pandemic, right? They're on a global scale, on a large scale, for example, as well as just on the everyday scale. And sometimes just being able to discuss the losses that we're going through is part of that grieving and that healing process. Just hearing that somebody else is also facing what you're facing, that somebody else can sort of resonate with your life experiences, is so powerful in terms of helping us heal. It's okay to feel frustrated, to feel angry, upset, scared. It's okay to feel all of those emotions all at once, honestly, when it comes to what we're going through right now, because of what we're witnessing. We are absolutely grieving as a community on a large scale for the lives that we've lost around the world. May Allah have mercy on them, and may Allah forgive them. And for the loss of our prayer spaces, and again, on an everyday scale too, the loss of our March break, the loss of what our everyday schedule used to be like. And it's okay to be angry that you are having to experience that change. And so part of this process as well is understanding that, emotions are just emotions. They're not, bad or good, right? We often put those value judgments on them, or even moral judgments on our emotions. It's okay to feel what you feel, right? And the thing is, when we don't process those emotions, that's when those repressed emotions can often become a powder keg for disaster. So the other point that I wanted to make, the second point for this 5-point talk, was this idea that busyness does not equal fulfillment. So what do I mean by that? Here's the thing. Most of us equate a busy life, very scheduled, pick up, drop off for your kids, making lunches, going to work, preparing for your presentations and pitches, etc., putting your kids to bed, whatever, and then on the weekends, for example, visiting your parents and your in-laws. And that's your week. And every week is kind of the same. It's a certain sort of routine or a schedule, and you just always have something scheduled, something going on. The thing is, sometimes when we're in that sort of rat race or just going through that rapid sort of schedule, we often think that that busyness, that sort of busy life, is actually equated or similar to or the same as being fulfilled in life. And so when things slow down, right, when we're on lockdown, when we're at home now, we can't go to work, our children aren't going to school, we're not going to school, everything gets enveloped in this silence, and we have to sit in this silence. And for a lot of us, that's very uncomfortable. Uncomfortable because we were so used to that busyness that we lived in. And for a lot of us, it can often be, it can kind of seduce us into thinking that we live a fulfilled life as well. And when life slows down, it can scare us and give us this anxiety because we're feeling, well, wait a minute, what am I doing with my life? Right? Now that I'm not running off and rushing off to a meeting or rushing off to do this, what does my life really mean? What am I contributing? What am I doing? Does that make sense? And so this sort of lockdown does give us this opportunity and this time to take a beat, take a breath, and to really sort of evaluate what we are doing with our lives. A lot of us have goals, right? Or we think that we have goals. For example, I often come across people and people will often say something like, I really want to do something with my life. And then when you ask them, so what would you like to do? They get really shy. They start to evade the question and they have nothing to say about it, right? All of us want to do something. We all want to feel like we are contributing and doing something meaningful with our lives, right? But in that busyness, often we kind of push off those big life goals that we think we have, right? We push them off. Okay, oh yeah, next year, when it's not so busy, when my kid finishes school, whatever it is, right? We have a lot of excuses. So this sort of time for us then is a really good moment to take a point to just reevaluate. For example, let's say you have a life goal of memorizing juz amma, right? The 30th juz or the last juz of the Quran. Let's say you want to memorize the whole juz, right? If that's where you want to be, inshallah, then kind of extrapolate backwards, right? Reverse engineer it. Then what do you need to be memorizing today? What do you need to be memorizing on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis? What would be your goals then to get to that ultimate goal of memorizing the 30th juz? Does that make sense? Right? So, and again, so it's about sort of taking this time to, write down some of those big life goals, those life dreams that you had that you wanted to fulfill and that maybe you kind of put off because you were busy, right? Now that you're not busy, take some time to reconsider those and really put effort into working towards them, right? We can't feel like we're living a fulfilled life when A, we don't have those goals, and number two, or B, we're not doing something in a regular, consistent way to try to achieve those goals. Does that make sense? So take this time, inshallah, as a means of achieving that fulfillment that, all of us desire and all of us hope for. The next, and also I wanted to say in terms of how, silence or slowing down can often fill us with anxiety. There's this great quote by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu who says, no amount of guilt can change the past and no amount of worrying can change the future. So go easy on yourself. For the outcome of all affairs is determined by Allah's decree. If something is meant to go elsewhere, it will never come your way. But if it is yours by destiny, from it you cannot flee, which I think is a beautiful, beautiful quote. And there are many other sort of ahadith as well as other sayings from our faith that have a similar concept. But I loved how, Umar radiallahu anhu, pointed out this idea that our anxiety often comes from worrying about things that we cannot change, sort of that powerlessness and feeling that there's so much that's out of our hands. There was a BBC News report, which is sort of really directly related to our topic, our webinar today. And so one of the experts in this article said that a lot of anxiety is rooted in worrying about the unknown and waiting for something to happen, right? Just like what Umar radiallahu anhu said, right? And coronavirus is just this on a macro scale. Without the busyness of going to work or sending our kids to school or going to school ourselves, it's like we enter the busyness of our minds, right? We don't have that busyness that we're running around anymore. Now we just sort of have this silence that we deal with. And it worries us, right? We start to worry about the future. We start worrying about things that we can't control. So the third part, or the third point I want to make, is that we want to sort of shift our focus from what we feel is powerlessness, what feels like a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of just stuff that's going on that we don't have any control over. We want to shift our focus then to what we do have control over. Focus on what is in our hands. And yes, pun intended. Yes, there is a picture of somebody washing their hands, which is absolutely something that we can be doing in this time. Because we often feel powerless when we don't have control, or we feel like we don't have any control, or we feel like that control has been taken from us. But the thing is, there is so much that we can be doing and that we are doing, and we're doing together as a community. And yes, washing our hands is one of them, right? Taking those really necessary steps, 20 seconds of lathering our hands, just doing what we can do to be vigilant. IMANA, which is the Islamic Medical Association of North America, put together these cute infographics about all the things we can be doing. For example, social distancing, washing or lathering our hands for 20 seconds, social isolation, or staying inside when we're feeling sick, etc. If you're feeling like you're not doing something and you're feeling anxiety because of that, you can make a checklist like this. Every morning you can say, did I do social distancing? Did I wash my hands for 20 seconds or lather my hands for 20 seconds, et cetera, right? Just make this into a list and every day check them off. It just makes you feel like there's a sense of accomplishment, right? You've done this and you have, right? SubhanAllah, it's something that we are all collectively trying to do our best to contain this pandemic. And also, of course, very related to that is, again, the concept from our faith, of this idea of, tie your camel. We're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that this virus doesn't continue to spread from social isolation to hand hygiene, et cetera, et cetera. And you just need to remind yourself that, you are trying your best and you are doing everything that is within your hands, inshallah. May Allah accept that from us. And the other thing, when I say, focus in on what is in your hands, another part, of course, to that is dua, right? When we raise our hands in supplication or prayer to our Lord, that's something else, of course, that's in our hands. And we sometimes need to remind ourselves of the power of dua, right? For example, our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "La yaruddu al-qada illa ad-du'a," right? Nothing repels the divine decree except for supplication, except for dua. Consider how powerful that is. That we have the master of the universe, the Lord of all the worlds, but we can change that divine decree. Our qada can be changed through, the simple sort of, what seems simple, of raising our hands and just asking of our Lord, right? That same master of the universe is the creator of you and me, right? It is our Lord who loves us so much and could if you wanted to, and if you asked for it, change whatever qada or decree that has been set forth, right? Our dua has that power. And just to remind yourself that you have that literally in your hands, right? SubhanAllah. And the other part too, just to sort of remind ourselves of, we are in the holy month of Rajab, right? Take advantage of the increase in blessing of this month. It might not be winter anymore technically, but we still do have long nights for night worship and still short days for fasting as well. So just to take advantage of that and just, devote our time in that way. And number 4 is to seek connection. And yes, I mean seek connection even in this time of social distancing. And so we have to kind of be creative about what we're doing. So in my research, for example, when I went to some Bangladeshi communities within Toronto, I saw sort of firsthand some of the profound isolation that, for example, migration can often bring about in a community. Here too, with this pandemic, it's a sort of new level of isolation that we're experiencing, and just the loneliness that comes with it, because of social distancing. And again, everybody's really different when it comes to how much socialization or social time they need, right? And everybody's different in the kind of social time they need. Some people, again, need to just pour their heart out to somebody, just person like right in front of them. Some people might need it on the phone. Others might need a warm hug. Maybe they just don't want words, right? At the end, and so others, just everybody has different needs. And so we kind of also have to take some time to kind of do some introspection and figure out what it is that you need, right? What does quality social time mean to you? Is it being with lots of people? And if that's the case, we're gonna have to be creative and do things like, WhatsApp chats with lots of people all together, and other sort of virtual ways of just feeling that we're still, with our tribe, with our crew. Or, is it that, quality social time is when you feel like you were listened to, when you feel like you were heard. So just having that person in front of you, whether it's, someone you're already having to be isolated with in your own home, or whether it's on the phone, just having someone really just offer that empathetic ear. Whatever it is, just try to figure out what real quality social time is for you. And then kind of advocate for yourself to meet that, right? Not everybody necessarily feels satisfied with the kind of social time that they're kind of given. Does that make sense? So you do kind of have to perhaps go out of your way to try to seek the social time that you need. And again, within the confines of social distancing. And just to know your tribe, know your people, know your family, know your loved ones, and to identify your supports. Maybe you are experiencing something really difficult and going through some difficult emotions. Just know who's that person, or who are those people that you can turn to when things get a little bit rough. It also, this other part of focus on what is in your hands. I think it's been so incredible to see what people have been doing around our communities. And so there are different sort of help your neighbor types of initiatives in your city, in your country, that I'm sure you can think of. But I think it's so amazing, subhanAllah, how the community has come together. And just sort of, there's that hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, he is not a believer whose, stomach is full while his neighbor's stomach is empty, right? And so just this beautiful sort of actualization of that hadith, that, living that sunnah, I think is so remarkable. Just people just going out and doing whatever they can to really rally together and do something for the community. And, if this is something that you need to do to feel like, you have that power in your hands, that you're doing something, you're contributing something, then please do, volunteer, get involved with these different organizations doing this great work around the city, because it's so important just to feel like you're doing something, right? Alhamdulillah, as we all are. And the other part too is, seek connection Yes, we seek connection with others, but we also need to be seeking connection with ourselves, with our inner selves, as well as seeking connection with our Lord, right? Take some time to contemplate and to reflect. You know, we are still allowed to go outside, at least in isolated kind of places. For example, you know, go out for a walk around the neighborhood, just maintaining your distance, or go out in the woods, for example, where nobody might be, hopefully, inshallah. And just take some time to sort of contemplate and to connect with yourself, to connect with, you know, life goals that you might have had that you haven't had a chance to really be working towards in your busyness, for example. You know, that sort of practice of reflection, tafakkur, tadabbur, right? Take that time. You can write in your journal. Just have that inner conversation that we're often too busy to have. And of course, you know, connecting that with the inner conversation that we also need to be having with our Lord, with our Creator, you know, through dua, through increased worship. It's sort of a great meditative way to ease ourselves into Ramadan, inshallah. And the last point, number 5, is to have hope. You know, one of the most powerful ways to combat loneliness or anxiety is to build resilience and to have hope, right? We live in very complex times, and it might feel like we're not doing something, or we feel powerless. We feel like we're not contributing something. We might feel locked up. Not just, I mean, physically locked up, but I mean, we may feel locked up within ourselves, within our souls. But we are doing something. And I do want us to focus on that. You know, we are actually doing something really profound. You know, we're coming together as a community, as humanity, as a global effort to try to save each other, right? It's not about us, for a lot of us, right? For example, if you're not immunocompromised, or, you know, you're young and healthy, able-bodied, etc., right? What we're trying to do, honestly, and the majority of us around the world, is we're trying to save each other, save those who are most vulnerable in our world, in our communities, by staying in our homes, so that social isolation, thinking more about hand hygiene, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really incredible, right? And think about those community help your neighbor initiatives. It's so powerful to see what people can do when they come together with a shared common goal, and just those beautiful acts of mercy and kindness that I read about every day. And honestly, I'm awed by. I think that's so beautiful, mashallah. Yeah, so I just want us to focus on just sort of the beauty and the strength of the human spirit that we have seen come and arise these past couple of weeks, and to have hope that inshallah we'll get through this together. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. May He envelop us in His mercy and strengthen us. May He galvanize us to care for our communities, and may we place our trust in Him. Jazakumullahu khairan. Thank you so much for tuning into this webinar. Anybody has any questions, you're very welcome to share them. I'd love to stay in touch as well. If you have ideas for Adam's World, any new scripts, new ideas, storylines you'd like to see, and just anything, please do feel free to get in touch, inshallah.
Great, thank you very much, Sister Farah. Appreciate sharing some very, very insightful tips, very practical things that definitely I have not been thinking about in some ways, for sure. You know, I always thought I was busy, and busy means you feel good about yourself, but you're right. This is one of those things that you really have to think about when the life really does slow down, and you start thinking about, okay, you know what? Are you just filling the free time with anything and everything, or are you actually doing something meaningful? So a lot of very cool things you talked about. Jazakallah khair. There are some comments that came in the chat box in terms of when you asked, I believe, regarding what are some losses. So some people mentioned things like unable to see my mom, can't play sports, disorientation, circumscribed by mobility, not knowing. These are some of the things that came up, so I just wanted to share that. And then there are a couple other comments. And again, please share your questions. There are some questions coming up as well. So I guess I will start with one question, the first one. Walking in nature is therapeutic for me. Can I do it?
I think according still to the public health safety rules, that it's okay for us to still be, for example, our backyard for sure is still open if you have a backyard. But I think even in isolated parts, for example, going to the woods, going to a park where there aren't really people around, I think it's still okay. Brother Daha, is that also what your impression is of, I know the safety regulations are constantly changing.
Yeah, of course, we just have to keep watching what the health officials are telling us, what the government bodies are telling us. But yes, this is actually one of the only things we are able to do, alhamdulillah, and it's actually definitely very powerful, very therapeutic, especially if you have active boys or kids or even girls. This is one of the things that you can still do as a family outside. So I think this is a good thing to share. How can I cope with the death anxiety? This is a serious question.
That is a very serious question. Do you mean death anxiety in terms of you're afraid for your own life, or are you sort of experiencing a lot of anxiety because you're constantly being bombarded with a lot of news about deaths around the world? Is that kind of, I'm sorry, I'm unsure. If it's the latter, I would say sometimes we do need to put up some boundaries in terms of how much news we're constantly being bombarded with or having to process. If that means turning off the TV, just sometimes we kind of need to be able to say, it's too much. It does become information overload, and it becomes really scary because we don't really understand what's happening, and it changes minute by minute. But if it's anxiety about our own death and sort of feeling scared about what it means to sort of, for example, sit on our deathbed, if you will, if that's kind of the phase you feel you may be entering into your life, I think part of that is what I was mentioning about those life goals. Consider if this is your deathbed, if this is the end of your life, if this is what is filling you with anxiety, maybe it is time to sort of reflect on what were those great dreams or hopes that you had for what you wanted to get out of life, right? Oftentimes we're filled with anxiety when we feel that we had these goals or dreams, things we wanted to contribute or to do, and we didn't get to do them. So maybe taking some time to list those out, consider those, and to take those concrete steps, whether it's daily action, weekly action, monthly action, to feel like we are working towards those goals, so we can feel at peace, at rest with ourselves as we are entering, if it is the end of our life. I think it's really important sometimes. And sometimes it is also, we want to leave something behind. So for example, writing out our life experiences or talking with our children or our loved ones about what life has been for us and what we've experienced, what we've learned from it, hoping to impart that knowledge or wisdom to our loved ones is also an important part of that process to make us not feel that anxiety. I hope, inshallah, that answers your question somewhat. If not, please email me.
Thank you. There is a question, there's a hand, sorry, I forgot to mention earlier. If you'd like to ask question live over the audio, we can do that by just simply you raising your hand and we'll unmute you. So we have a question from Leslie right now. So I'll unmute you and you're more than welcome to ask your question. Where did it go? Sorry. Okay. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Leslie. I think Leslie is not unmuted. I'll just unmute.
She is. Are you listening? Oh. Are you here with us, Leslie? Are you able to talk? Let me try again. I think she is muted herself. That's the problem.
Okay.
So if you want to talk, please unmute yourself, please. Okay. If you are having trouble, we'll let you try unmuting yourself. In the meantime, we'll take another question. How can I deal with the anxiety of having the kids around all day cooped up in the house without the option of them releasing their energy in playgrounds, parks, with friends, etc.?
It's a really difficult one. I totally understand and empathize with you. So we can still go out into nature. I don't know if you feel comfortable doing that, but just to go into more isolated areas, obviously not to the park areas where other children may be, but to a conservation area, maybe to a hiking ground where there aren't a lot of people, so they can get out some of their energy is really lovely. And again, being out in nature is so healing. And then kind of I know a lot of us, for example, we're feeling like if the kids are out of school, they're gonna, become rabid. They're not going to know how to do anything at school or sit down in a chair anymore and all these things. So I think a lot of us are trying very hard to, make it like school at home. Does that make sense? And I think that's also causing a lot of anxiety for us. I think I read a post, something like, inshallah, their teachers, everyone is going to be in the same boat, and their teachers will, inshallah, be able to bring back that discipline, that classroom etiquette back into them. But sort of ensuring the mental health of your children at this moment where there is so much uncertainty and they are being cooped up and we don't know how long this is going to be for, just kind of focusing on making it fun, making it time for connection. And so, playing hide and seek in your house and running around and, having a sort of a different home routine than maybe what has sort of focused or I don't know, as calm as it used to be. You kind of have to just allow them to have a little bit more fun, perhaps, inshallah. It's kind of what I've been trying to do, at least in my home. And please do share if anybody has any sort of tips as well, please do share in the chat box, because I think we can learn so much from each other.
Thank you very much for sharing that. It is tough, there's no doubt. That's one of the number one questions we hear. A lot of mothers, parents are concerned about. There's no doubt about it. May Allah make it easy for everybody. One of the things that, experts still allow is, they're not allowing technically, play dates, of course, but if there are one or two families that you, of course, are close with or you can trust, having some outdoor type of activities still with those friends around, and I'm not talking about playgrounds here, for sure not, but again, nature type of things that could help, but again, still it's hard to maintain that social distancing, which is being highly recommended. So it's a call you have to make. It is a difficult call, but it is one of those things you have to weigh what's doable, what's not doable. There is interesting, there's a comment, I believe it says here, and I'm assuming it's in relation to this question that came up. Donate your sofa, let them lay with some pillows, cover a wall with newspaper, let them paint it with their hands, make a basket, make a routine chart of things to do with fun, not just work, and let 11 things, I'm not sure what 11 things mean, but put decoration pieces away and donate to your kids. This is actually very interesting.
I like that.
Okay. There's also a brother who has suggested some very good list of ayat for us to recite and some du'as as well. Basically, he's suggesting that we should remind ourselves or read some of the du'as, which I won't be able to necessarily repeat here. So many of them, mashallah, he's listed, but قُلْ لَنْ يُصِيبَنِي إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا, say nothing is going to be my fate other than what is Allah has already written. وَإِنْ يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِالضُّرِّ, and it's a long, see there's some of the long ayat, but basically, nothing is going to touch me unless it's Allah's permission, and so on, and so many ayat about tawakkul and so on. So thank you very much, Brother Azam, for sharing these ayat with us. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If there are any other questions, you can raise your hand using the option that you have there, and we can let you speak, or you can once again keep writing, posting any questions or comments, and if we are done, then we will pretty much call it a day. There's some good comments about people saying thank you very much for organizing this very helpful webinar. It's helped me a lot it has helped me in stress. There's, I believe, a question or comment. Let's see. I think helping kids to give back in this time is also empowering. like making cards for nursing homes and emailing pictures or sending notes to neighbors. So if you want to add something to it, Dr. Farah, at this point, you're more than welcome to.
Oh, that's a really beautiful segment. I totally agree. You know, it's not just adults that need to feel like we have a meaningful contribution to life, right? Kids need to feel that too. They'll do anything to make their parents happy, for example, and they want to feel like they're giving back to their community. I think also, you know, Ramadan's coming up, so making Ramadan cards and then mailing them out, snail mail, remember that, postal mail, sending them out to our family and to our loved ones is such a great way, again, to foster that social connection that we also need at this time.
Great. There are a couple other questions or comments. Do you have any tips on how to figure out yourself and like what do we love to do that will fill us with joy so we can go into that career field?
Oh, okay, mashallah, that's a very good question. Maybe email me, because I think you know, for example, there is always that route of taking different personality tests, for example, Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, for example, that does help to begin with. But then in terms of career shadowing, job shadowing, internships, and just talking, for example, just making those connections with people who are in those fields to see if it's sort of the right path for you. I think there's a lot, but if that, you know, that's an exciting time to begin that sort of self-exploration to find out, inshallah, what you want to do. But yeah, please do email me. I can help maybe make some of those connections, those professional connections, and to see where you want to go.
Great, thank you. There is somebody who has his hand up, Raid, I believe. Let's see if he has a question. Let's go. Go ahead, please. You're going to have to unmute yourself, Brother Raid.
I think it looks like Leslie is unmuted though.
Oh, okay. Leslie, are you there? If you can hear us and if you're able to speak, please go ahead and ask a question. Okay, I don't know what's happening today. We had a good conversation the other day over the, that's fine. But yeah, if any time, if any of you like to speak, please go ahead and speak up and unmute yourself. Somebody said puzzles and games are a great way to connect and pass time these days. Somebody asking, will this be recorded or be accessible later? Yes, it is right now being, you can access it on Sound Vision Facebook page. If you look for Sound Vision or Sound Vision Foundation Facebook page, it is actually live there, and it will be available it will be available recorded there as a recording. We will also be emailing the recording to all of you, and it is also going to be uploaded in a couple of days on Sound Vision Foundation's YouTube channel, inshallah. Also, Sister Nergis suggested that we can have kids join virtual classes that are being offered for kids specifically by Dawanet. That includes yoga, crafts, and story time. So if you're bored, you're more than welcome to check those out, especially for your kids, especially to keep them busy and productive. Another good idea is put out a flyer in your neighborhood and start a WhatsApp group of your neighbors, which is pretty good, very good. Couple of questions and comments here. Connect with Allah and enhance and increase salah and ibadah, inshallah. This has been discussed, but really this is an opportunity in this situation. So there's a question here. Can you please share the list of du'as that the brother has shared? So I just want to let you know, those are actually list of ayat, just verses, not du'as as much as ayat. Yes, let me see if I can actually share it right now. Copy and paste. These are more like reminders for us to actually keep in mind. So let me see if I can copy and paste it and share with the rest of the chat group. We can make that available, inshallah, for everybody. Okay, so in the meantime, if there are any other questions? Let's see if there's any other comments, questions. Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Farah. I really appreciate your questions, your answers, and of course your specific list of things that you have shared. I want to, actually there are a couple of, I'm sorry, before I conclude, there are some more comments and questions coming. I just want to make sure we do cover as much as possible. Says make a list of Allah's names, I'm assuming, so that we can on individual basis, we can, oh, I see, interestingly. I am assuming Allah's commands maybe that we are transgressing on individual basis, maybe. That's interesting from Sister Saima. How do you talk to children, reflecting upon it, and so on. So pretty good, some obligations. Okay, sorry. List of Allah's obligations that we are transgressing. So this is part of, I think, what you talked about earlier, also of self-reflection, perhaps, that we should be doing. And maybe if you have any comments on that, please go ahead and talk about it if you need to.
No, I think you covered that very well. It's perfect.
Okay, good. There is a comment from Tawqir. Things to do for or with children. Go for a hike, go on a long drive, go to park or play soccer, etc., but not playgrounds and play structures. Drive around deserted downtown, which is a good one. Do project with children at home, handiworks, artwork, research projects, board games, and puzzles. Great, thank you very much for sharing all this. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that covers it. It's almost time to end for us as well. So thank you very much. This is a very engaging webinar, and thank you for everybody's comments and questions today. May Allah bless you all and keep you all mentally positive and engaged, inshallah, yourself, your family, and may Allah keep you all safe. Ameen. And so just a couple of announcements as we conclude. Number one, tomorrow we have a webinar, same time, with Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid on doing sadaqah during this pandemic. How do we keep giving back and doing charity, acts of charity during these times? So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to keep doing charity in these difficult times. So please join us back at the same place. You're going to have to go to soundvision.com/webinars to sign up. We will also send you out the link tonight for it. Secondly, please do not forget to keep donating and contributing to Sound Vision. All of this is possible because, mashallah, people like you keep contributing and donating to this great work. Inshallah, and starting next week, we are going to be switching our weekday timings for webinars to 8 p.m. Central and 9 p.m. Eastern. We want to experiment with different times. Because different people are more available at different times. So we want to see how that goes. And we have a list of exciting webinars coming up, inshallah. So please keep connected, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Barakallahu feekum. And inshallah, we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow, same time. And thank you, Dr. Farah. Jazakumullah khairan. I appreciate it. Assalamu alaikum.